Hi YouTube. It's fine. I'm not the best at starting these intros, but hi YouTube. My name is Khulumanqamanqo, and today I want to vent and speak about showing up unfinished. I want to first contextualize this conversation because I was like trying to vent on my story yesterday, and I was like, you know what, I might as well just make a YouTube video. So it's mainly about creativity. The way the video is going to be structured is in three sections. I'll be speaking about the first section, value. Then the second section will be about creating for an audience versus creating for self. And then the last section will be experimental creativity versus formulaic creativity. So my working definition of creativity is I'm going to be reading because I've got a few points I want to touch on. So if you see me like reading, that's why I'm like reading. Also, the lighting is trash, I won't lie. It's not the best. I've got like a white screen behind the camera and I'm reading off the screen. So yeah, just follow. So my working definition for creativity is creativity to me means alchemy. I am from the Eastern Cape and a lower middle class family. And the only way I found myself escaping this reality was through imagination and fantasy. I've been privileged enough to be in spaces and environments that have challenged and taught me the power of imagination and dreaming. I often think of moments at home where we would be struggling financially and my mom was able to turn the little we had into substance for the entire family. That is the nature and process of creativity for me. The ability, skill, and talent of transmutation. Creativity is my form of transmutation. I grew up being bullied for being queer and somewhat whimsical. I learned at an early stage the power and the importance of transmutation. Creativity allowed me to create universes, realities that allowed me to escape the tragedies of the real world. It allowed me to breathe and exist without prejudice, only in existing in a state of personal peace. Creativity is connection. It is the universal language that connects and unites people from different parts of the world with different life experiences, backgrounds, contexts. It's an embodiment. It's an embodiment of a core South African value, Ubuntu. Man came into this world with nothing and leaves with nothing. But through the power and art of creativity, we have everything. Creativity means alchemy, or at least creativity for me is alchemy. So for the first section of this part, I want to speak about value. My difficulty in creating and posting online is one, I feel like everything has become so retinal, where if aesthetically it doesn't seem, or what you're producing and putting out doesn't seem to have value, no one's going to consume and engage with it. And that's the difficult part, because it's like you want to create, but now you find yourself not having resources to meet the standards of creativity. And the question I would like to ask is, do we consume content that does not have material value? I feel like we've somewhat over focused on aesthetics, where if something doesn't aesthetically seem like it's good, aesthetically seem like it has value, no one is going to consume it. And that's me generalizing, because people do consume out there, but the average viewer wants to consume something that is aesthetically pleasing. And right now the standard is very high because a lot of people are creating, and the creative economy is a growing economy, and people have skills, people are self-teaching themselves a lot of skills. So now it's like, one, everyone has the standard of what is good and what has value. And now if you find yourself not meeting up to that standard, does that automatically mean that what you're putting out, what you're creating, does not have value? And I find it somewhat discouraging, because people will say, no, just post, and then you do that and no one is consuming. And this will be part of the later stage of this video, but from the onset, I had to like genuinely realize that one, I enjoy creating for self, but also it's always nice creating for an audience. So trying to marry the two is something I'm actively working on, but it's difficult when you're trying to create and you're obviously, you know what you're doing, but the audience and people consuming your work only get to see the external workings of what you're doing. And I truly believe not in explaining and giving away the law of what you're creating, because I feel like the minute you try explain your idea, explain a concept, it constricts the concept. It becomes so much, it becomes cheap. And I don't mean cheap in the literal sense, but it takes away from the space, volume of what you're creating. Like, I'm trying to think of an analogy to explain what I'm saying, but I do try not to explain too much of what I'm doing because, yeah, I just truly feel like when you explain concepts, explain ideas, it constricts the ideas. Also, we have somewhat normalized critiquing and judging unfinished ideas. I, for one, am someone who enjoys listening to full albums. I don't like listening to like singles or preludes to music. And I've adopted this mindset to art in the way I try to consume art. I don't like consuming something that isn't finished because I want to like get the whole gist of what I'm consuming, right? So it's become difficult because somewhat people are able to critique something that's not finished. And for me, it boggles my mind because what is it that we're actually critiquing? You can't critique something that's unfinished because it's not finished. So therefore, there's nothing to actually critique. And that's where I have not dissonance, but like trouble trying to create and trying to distinguish what is of value, what isn't of value. And as much as we try not say it, visuals matter. People are consuming retinally. And if something does not have retinal value, someone is just not going to consume it. Scroll. Like TikTok, the way TikTok has affected, and I'm speaking out of what I, as a consumer, has seen and somewhat something I've read and learned. But a consumer will scroll, will go to the next product if it does not have retinal value. And it's like difficult, like it's so difficult trying to like create and having the courage to show up unfinished because, yeah, like you're trying to optimize and you're trying to have and put out stuff that has value. But then it's like, right now on this stage, I don't have all the resources to keep elevating and keep working on what I'm trying to create. Does that mean I should stop creating? That's where I'm at. And yeah, so that's my first section about value. The second section is creating for an audience and creating for self. I'm going to be using a concept. I'm so sorry. I keep looking at myself on the screen instead of looking at the camera. But yeah, so I'm going to be using a concept I created using one word, and authentic. And this concept was really about playing with perception, etc., etc. So first, it's going to be on the screen. So authentic, I broke it down into 4 ways of viewing that one word. 1, authentic, being in awe. 2, authentic, the normal word. 3, awe. Authentic, like cute, adorable, cute, nice. And then the last one was authentic, shock, confusing, question. And yeah, that concept was me trying to play with the idea of us being multifaceted people. we are not one-dimensional. And I'm trying to somewhat communicate that through the stuff I create. And yeah, us being multifaceted people is seen, I try and make that seen through this one concept, authentic. And I am trying to find a way to communicate and also create with that mindset that, listen, I am not just one-dimensional. I am a multifaceted person, and we are multifaceted people. But it feels as if people, and sometimes something won't land because someone is viewing it from a one-dimensional lens. How do you go about creating? How do you go about navigating that? And one, it's not your job to explain and try make people get what you're trying to do. But then it's also like, if someone's going to be viewing something one-dimensionally, does that take away from what you've created? No. But then the job or the point you were trying to make does not land. If a teacher is teaching a maths lesson and everyone doesn't get it, did she do her job? That's where I'm having trouble, and I'm just trying to continuously create and work on trying to communicate that what I'm doing, what I'm trying to create in this season is genuinely great art, in the sense that it's not something you're going to get immediately. It's not retinal. It seems basic, it seems flat and one-dimensional, but when you actually zoom in, look at it, find the little nuggets, it's more than what you see. It's not as one-dimensional as it presents itself to be. And in the age of AI, that's why I like playing around with something that seems silly, that doesn't make sense, because again, we should be creating, we should be experimenting. And I'm trying to see how I can go about creating when I don't somewhat have resources. Because again, one, you want to create, right? You want to create from lived experience, life, and whatnot. But I think we underplay how important having resources and somewhat access is in improving your craft and just getting better. And I'm trying to not be in the space of just creating to create and show that I can somewhat create and think of ideas. But also, I don't want to not create and be like, okay, what are you doing? It's this thing I'm somewhat working on. And yeah, I find myself, when I am unable to create, let's say, facet A of what I'm trying to create, I try explore different ways of creating. Right now, I'm trying to play around with my writing, play around with words, and play around with concepts, because again, I moved back home in the Eastern Cape, so I'm not in the space where I can create physical, tangible stuff like an event or whatnot. I mean, I can try, but I find myself in this context not being able to do so because I'm back home and there's a lot of other stuff behind the scenes. The second point for creating for an audience versus creating for self that I want to touch and speak about is, should art always reflect who you are? Now, with the context I gave of what creativity means to me, one, this is fantasy, this is imagination. Yes, it's always cool, it's always great that art and creativity is rooted and grounded in reality. But also, sometimes reality is boring. Where do you distinguish the line between creating in real life, but imaginatively? I'm trying to rephrase and reword what I'm trying to say, but should art always reflect reality, in the sense that, what if you're just being delusional? What if you're trying to actively create something that isn't there yet. But now, again, it goes back to like the audience and creating for an audience versus creating for yourself. I know that I'm trying to create something that's rooted in creativity, imagining, fantasy. But then again, an audience does not somewhat understand and know this. So does that like take away from what I'm trying to create? Should what I create always be rooted in reality? Should it always be rooted in real life? I feel like this is why I just trust self and just continue creating until somewhat you've built what you're trying to create. But then again, I feel like there's this intricate dance where you somewhat need to explain yourself. I don't know why, but you need to explain yourself. Somewhat people need to understand what you're doing so that it doesn't seem like you're just doing stuff. So yeah. And then the last part, experimental creativity versus formulaic creativity. Now, I am someone who loves experimental creativity, and these are, I don't know if these are actual concepts, but when I was trying to jot down notes for this video, these are the two phrases that made sense in my mind on what I was trying to get at. Experimental creativity is when you're just creating and trying to build a language, build a portfolio, build ideas. Sometimes the ideas land, sometimes they don't. And then there's formulaic creativity, where you copy and paste a certain type of formula to creativity. And this is tying in the entire video with value and creating. I feel like we've prioritized formulaic creativity so much that the minute you're not following a certain type of formula, people don't see value in what you're doing. When you're not following certain steps, people do not see value in what you're doing. And I love experimenting, right? Experimental creativity is something I've just been doing. I like to test out ideas, see what works, see what doesn't work, and also build a certain type of artistic language for myself. So when you're more on the experimental creativity side of things, I find that the average consumer does not get it, does not understand what you're trying to do because it's experimental. Experiments sometimes work, sometimes they don't. An experiment changes after each experiment until you see what works. But then I'm trying to find the sweet spot where it is still experimental creativity, but then I can continue replicating and continue creating based on what works and what hasn't. And I don't like following the formulaic creativity side of things because, for example, I left posting on TikTok because one, I truly enjoy the intentionality of watching a YouTube video, searching someone you want to watch. On TikTok, I found that the challenge I had with posting on TikTok was, one, there's an algorithm, and there's always going to be algorithms. We are living in a very algorithm. English is not my mother tongue, so bear with me. We're living in a very algorithmic. Wait, let me write it down. Algorithmic. Girl, we're living in a time where the algorithm really determines what is good and what is not good. And now it's like, why am I battling with an algorithm? Why am I battling with creating a certain type of video that's going to perform well versus creating something that's true to what I want to create at its core and hoping and seeing if people are going to find it? So that's why I've trying to ground what I'm creating, trying to create an experiment in reality, because I don't want to follow a formula, but also I understand the mindset and I understand why having a certain type of formula works. So yeah, this is where I'm at right now in terms of creating and just testing out ideas and concepts, because I feel like I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. Not really, but I do like having stuff true to what I want it to be at its core. And I am realizing, like, you know what, just create, you can always improve later. But also, I'm trying to marry between not just creating for the sake of, oh, I'm creating stuff that actually has value, creating stuff that someone would actually want to watch. And yeah, like, there's also this idea I'm trying to get away of and get away from, which is showing up perfectly. You do want to be presentable when you're creating, right? And you do want to create where it seems comfortable, where you would watch your own video. But then it's like, you know what, like, just live with the doubts. I saw a TikTok from Pink Pantheress, yes, where she says you've got to live with the doubt. And it's not easy, but Sana, I'm trying to genuinely live with the doubt. If it performs well, it performs well. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's not my job to try explain what I'm trying to do. It's not my job to make people get it. I'm trying to create, I'm trying to actively put out stuff that someone could connect to, learn from, think differently. And yeah, so that's the video. That's where I'm at right now. The fact that I thought I could speak about this on a casual story and the video is like on 20 minutes plus is literally why I had to create this video. But yeah, just living life right now. I hope you're well if you're watching. If you make it to the end of this video, comment a favorite emoji. Also, if you're still watching, I find it so awkward trying to create and like actively build, and like people are just observing, watching, and no one comments or anything. It's so awkward because it's like, okay, people are watching, but like no one's saying anything. I be commenting, I comment here and there, I add an emoji, I like, I engage. It's just, yeah, it is what it is though. So until the next video, tot ziens.